late or very early or somewhere in between. So we've tried to kind of select a time that would be the most applicable for all the different time zones we have. The people who are really going to get the short end of the stick will be our European team members, who would be 4 a.m. so they likely will not join. They'll have to review the recordings, but we've kind of done that also for a reason, because the European team has a lot of AI experts on their team already, as Pontus and Pontiva has an AI specialist group, so they're probably a bit ahead of the curve. I also wanted to just acknowledge that we have a broad audience here, and the audience is probably going to have people that are very, just beginners in terms of using AI, maybe not even used it at all. And then we may have some people who are far along and are using it, and are power users in their own right. But we're trying to tailor this to relatively early adoption. So we're going to start with kind of the basics to help enhance personal productivity in your work. And we will progressively build on that to get more and more advanced. But so we will start with fairly basic use cases. So if this isn't appropriate for you and you feel like you already know how to do all this stuff, by all means, you don't need to stay. But we do want to try and cater to the broadest audience here possible, because it's critically important to Bridgewest, and we think for all of our portfolio companies and all of our team members that we're using AI every day in our work. And to that end, we've identified a champion inside of Bridgewest to help lead the initiative inside Bridgewest, and that's Ryan Irving. And he's been using AI quite a bit, as many of our other team members have. He's far more advanced than most, and he's kind of been tasked with leading this initiative and with helping us with a number of initiatives inside Bridgewest in terms of helping us streamline our own operations and how we do things. So I'm going to turn the time over to Ryan. One more thing I would like to say before I do that is this is a big undertaking for Ryan, and we are going to try to lean on others from time to time, to call on others who are using AI, who have use cases that they may want to share with the broader team, because their use cases in their specific area might have broader applicability. So we know that we have a good curriculum set that we can pull on from Pontiva, but we certainly would want any of you who are using AI in your work and have found it productive, or as you go through this, start to find ways to use AI to help enhance your productivity. We may call on you from time to time to help host these sessions. So we welcome, and we'll go further than welcoming. We'll at times ask for others to help lead some of these sessions. So we appreciate everyone's participation. We want to make this collaborative, and we will go from there. I'll turn it over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Hello, everyone, and welcome. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Ryan Irving. I am a senior financial analyst at Bridgewest Group. I've been with the company for about 5 years now, doing primarily FP&A work. And I have been using AI tools in my day-to-day work for the past few years, really since ChatGPT was released. And I've really enjoyed finding new ways to leverage these tools to unlock time saved, improve the quality of my work, and think about issues that I may not have thought of to begin with. So using AI as a thought partner from that lens. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for joining this call. I know it's likely odd hours for some of you, but it's going to be really impactful to have all of you in the audience and start using these tools, and also start collaborating in ways that we find these tools useful. So first and foremost, this is going to be, as Adam mentioned, it's going to be foundational to begin with. So we're going to start off at the ground level. So again, if you are a power user or you do know these systems inside and out, feel free to drop in and out as you see fit. The one ask I would have of you before you do take off is if you could provide any use cases in your day-to-day work that you've already applied that's saving you time or unlocking efficiencies. It would be great to start chatting initially, just to start building out a repository and understanding how you're using these tools. So the goal here is not to get everyone to use AI the same way, but rather to spark creativity across the board so that once I see how Adam is using his cloud subscription, it may spark new ideas in me. Once I have the groundwork, I can move up from there. So that's the one ask I have. If you could email me directly, we can either organize time or you can simply explain your workflow and we can move from there. But for now, we're going to go into the basics of getting started with AI. I'm going to go into what this series is, but first I'm going to start off with what it is not going to be. It's not going to be a long lecture from my end on what AI is technically. I'm not going to go through the history of AI or go into the deeply technical aspects. I think for all of us on the call, the most valuable use of our time will be focused on practical use cases. So focused on ways in which we can use these tools right away, because there is a lot of hype around these tools and it leaves quite a few of us frustrated and not knowing exactly where to turn and how to start leveraging these tools. Second is going to be, it's going to be collaborative. So as Adam mentioned, we are going to rely on some of you in the future to present on an ad hoc basis some of your use cases. And this is really going to unlock creativity across the board. So I'm going to come to you with some of my personal use cases and some of our team's personal use cases. But from there, it's going to become more collaborative and we'll spark different ideas from there. And lastly, it's going to be responsible. So we're going to follow decent guidelines across the board. We do have a slide on security here, so we'll touch on that in more detail. But these are the three primary topics that we're going to be covering. Just a short comment on how these sessions will run. They're going to be short and frequent. This will likely be the most slides that we go through. I have 14 slides here just going through kind of the foundation to set things up. And then from there, it's going to be mostly us jumping in straight into a session of an actual use case, showing you how it works. And then from there, we'll go one or two ideas at a time within different tools. So 15 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open up for Q&A and just general dialogue where we can share ideas as a team. Number two, as I mentioned, we can join when useful. So if any of you are beyond the level of expertise on the topic that we're discussing, feel free to use your time elsewhere, but happy to have you in any sessions. And to the third point, please share what's working. Again, anything that helps you save time, improve your processes, research faster, etc. It's going to be helpful across the board. So if it's helpful for you, it's likely going to drive help across the board. And lastly, the end goal we'd like here is to build a library, not only of these recordings filtered by topic, but also by real use cases that we've identified as a team. And from here, our use cases are going to look different by industry. So it's going to be really valuable in time to start going through these individual use cases by industry and also looking at what kind of work it's doing, whether it's just summarizing documents or completely automating workflows. So just to touch on where AI really shines right now, it's really shining on the boring work. So a lot of what we cover is going to be what seems like boring work, so repetitive, manual, and time-consuming tasks. This is where it's going to unlock a lot of time. So it's going to be boring tasks, but it's going to free us up to do more enjoyable work. It really shines with drafting, rewording, and reformatting. I'm fairly certain most of us on this call have used it in some capacity there. And then lastly, summarizing and cleaning up data. We're going to go through a few use cases on this in a moment. On the flip side, it also does great work with thinking. So using it as a thought partner. For those of you that were present for my presentation a few weeks ago, this was my thesis, was really changing our thinking and using it as a thought partner. I'm going to get into this more in the next slide, but by using it for thinking work, we can do things like pressure test ideas, really untangle messy problems. But changing this thinking is going to be a major shift. This is going to be a theme that follows us throughout the rest of these meetings. And it's going to be changing our way of thinking as these tools, rather than just thinking of them as glorified search engines, thinking of them as colleagues. So at the moment, most people are using these tools as a glorified vending machine. So they're essentially just plugging in one simple question to get back a generic, simple, predictive answer. And then from there, they decide whether it helps and moves on, or they go back and forth, kind of a ping pong situation with the chat. Where we start to unlock the real value is where we treat the AI tool as a colleague. And this is where we give it context in a role. We ask it to push back and challenge us and refine our thinking. And from here, we get a much more useful output. So I'll show some examples on this, but we will get into how to set up these rules in a later session. Just a few quick slides on security. It is important to keep security in mind as we use these tools. They are incredibly powerful, but it is important to keep data sensitivity in mind. So 2 rules, these are kind of hand in hand. The first one is to never enter any sensitive information into free or personal plans. And second kind of goes hand in hand with that, and is to avoid avoid inputting any information into a non-approved AI tool that you would not email to someone outside of your company. So that's just sort of a good guideline to follow. In terms of company control tools, these are going to be better fit for sensitive work. So things like M365 Copilot, this is within the company tenant and has access to all of O365. Any approved tools, so for us at Bridgewest, this would be the Claude Team Plan. Beyond that, it would likely be any enterprise plan, although those plans tend to be much more expensive. It's a massive jump from a team plan. But within these plans, we tend to have company controlled access and retention, and it's really built for work under company policy. On the flip side, we have public or personal accounts. I do have a ChatGPT account, and inside of this, I do use it for non-sensitive work only. So things like public info, research, general questions, sort of one-off questions. I do this personally because of Claude and its token limitations at times. So if I'm running complex tasks, I can rely on ChatGPT for some of this non-sensitive data. Also within these accounts, we can work with sanitized examples. So if we have a one-pager and all we need to do is just pull out 2 key terms, we can import those documents and pull them out and add back the sensitive information. But when in doubt, it's best to just use the approved company tool. One more note, sort of similar to security, but it is always important to check the output of these tools. One situation that went viral recently was this prompt that people were using for ChatGPT and other tools, where they were asking, they were giving the situation that the car wash was only 100 meters away. Should they walk or drive? And the response they got back confidently was the advice was to walk because it is much closer. If you have mobility issues, it's much better to walk to the car wash. And this is an example where these tools can erroneously give you advice and confidently stand by it. And it's really just predicting. A lot of people believe that these tools can think. They cannot think on their own. They're simply predicting, and it does fail. Another example I used before it was patched was the strawberry example, where you asked ChatGPT how many R's were in strawberry, and it confidently would tell you there are 2 R's in strawberry, and it is because it is not actually thinking, it's predicting. And the best predictive answer at the time was the number 2, so 2 R's. And I went back and forth, and it stood on that hill the entire time that there are only 2 R's in strawberry. So along these same lines, we should always keep in mind that AI can be confidently wrong, especially on things like numbers, dates, and specific facts. So from here, it's really important to back check our information with the source before you act on anything. It's also good to treat everything as a first draft rather than a final output. Seems like it should be self-explanatory, but when we're in a rush and these tools seem to be extremely accurate, they can trip up and they can be wrong at times, and they can be confidently wrong at that. So this is not a reason to avoid these tools. It's just going to make you better at using them. So they do have their faults, but they're still extremely strong in other aspects. The simplest AI advice, just broadly speaking, is to ask questions to the chat. This seems really simple and rudimentary, but this is something that's going to transform the way we use these tools. So the most value really isn't in digging through libraries of prompts, it's to use these tools to come up with better prompts internally. So we can start off by giving a role. For example, I'm preparing a finance update. You give it a task. So for example, help me turn these rough notes into a clean summary. And then you follow up and ask it to ask you questions on what it needs. So a good follow-up prompt here would be, before answering, ask me any clarifying questions you need until you're confident you understand the task. And so in this way, it interviews you back and it gets much more information out of you. And from there, you get a much better output. Just a few definitions here. I'm just kind of touching on these topics broadly, just so we have a general understanding. A few terms that gets used across AI. First is going to be chat. These are going to be different situations in which we use AI. Within chat, it's really one-time help when we jump in. Just for a quick summary, within this, you need to really guide each turn. It's for something like just summarize this memo. For reusable roles, this will be instances where we reuse certain lenses or perspectives. This will be our thought partner, and we'll get into this in a later session where we reuse these skills within Claude, which act as roles. And this would be best when we want to return back to a certain role, such as a skeptical CFO. So this will shine light in certain situations that we may have missed. And lastly, agent. This term is used probably the most usefully across the industry at the moment. Broadly speaking, this is just a repeatable workflow. It runs a defined job using approved sources, steps, and boundaries, and it's often best when the work repeats. It can be as simple as just every Monday morning, prepare my morning briefing. So it really does not have to be extremely expensive, extremely dangerous, and extremely complex. Yes, it can be, but it can also be simplified. So we'll get into this in later sessions. Just going to touch on tools just for a brief moment. At Bridgewest, we've identified Copilot and Claude as our two primary tools internally. Copilot, we do have basic and premium plans. We use this for internal work. Premium will unlock at $30 per user. It does unlock features such as file search. So this is where the tool becomes really valuable in hunting down files within O365 and explaining differences. So from here, we can talk to the chat and figure out what is happening between versions, as an example. It can also pull data from Teams, Outlook, and different applications. So everything works internally. Copilot can be clunky. It really works best when the data is clean, so we have good structure within files. So that's something to keep in mind there. So if we go to take a first stab at Copilot, it can have its faults, so just keep that in mind. And we will get to Copilot in later use cases. But for now, for this session, we're going to focus on Claude. Claude is best with reasoning, long document synthesis, first drafts, etc., coding, if that's what you're using it for. It's really the strongest, most powerful system, and we prefer it because it has the team functionality, and that's the plan that we use for Bridgewest. It offers more security, more control, and the ability to collaborate within our team. I will get into this interface in just a moment. That'll be the last aspect of this presentation. It's just a lay of the land. And I just want to touch briefly on the other tools in case you use them. There's nothing wrong with them. The functionality that we go through with Claude is going to be applicable to these other tools. So if you are married to ChatGPT, you just like the vibe of it better, you like the way it interacts with you, you can apply pretty much everything we're going to cover from Claude into ChatGPT. There may just be some layout differences. ChatGPT is going to be great with brainstorming, analysis, writing, coding. This is really neck and neck with Claude. It is a really powerful system still. I still use it for general research and brainstorming, etc., mostly non-sensitive work. Gemini is within the Google suite, so it's really powerful if you use Google tools. Gemini itself is quite strong, but we have some data sensitivity concerns with Gemini as a whole, and really Google as a whole. Other useful tools will be Perplexity and Grok. If you're using these are still powerful models. But at the end of the day, we do need to identify which models are going to work best for us and run with them, because we do have budget bandwidths at the end of the day. I'm just going to touch on a few use cases within this session. This is something that I think everyone here on this call deals with, which is turning raw material into structured output. So I'm going to start off with a few screenshots. Just showing you, just to give you a rough idea at a high level. And then I'm going to switch over to Claude itself, give you the lay of the land, and show you some of these use cases in real time. So first, just high level, this is a situation where we have a rough input. These are just hypothetical mock data from a client call. So we're saying, call with customer, they like the pilot, worried about implementation. We then give it a prompt. We give it a role, so we tell it it's the chief of staff, and to turn these notes into concise client follow-ups with these important items. And then quickly, just a few minutes later, we get a clean first draft just from those rough notes. So from here, if you have pages and pages of rough notes, you can imagine how great of a job it can do at cleaning up the notes, which is something I'll get to within Claude. Next, just at a high level, this is the difference between using a lazy prompt and a colleague prompt. Just keeping this thought in mind, really this mental model of using AI as a thought partner. So with a lazy prompt, this is just a mock supplier agreement where I'm just simply asking to summarize the supplier agreement. In this case, it just gives me a really high level summary and just concludes with overall it appears to be a standard supplier contract. On the flip side, if we ask the colleague to protect us as a hypothetical company and flag the top risks and 3 items to negotiate, we get a completely different output. And at the end of the day, we get a flag, so anything we need to look out for from this contract. So same material that we're providing, it's just a slightly different prompt. And this shows you the type of output that we get just by tweaking a few of the sentences in the inputs. I'm actually going to flip before we get to the final page. I'm going to flip to Claude. This is going to be the landing page here. So just going to speak to this at a high level as if those on this call have not used Claude yet. This landing page is going to look similar to others, Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT. We have a search bar here where we can start off with a single one-off question. It can be just a simple Google search, or we can drop in a file using this plus icon. We can drag and drop, or we can click the plus and directly add the files from here. Once we add the file, we can ask it exactly what we need. We can go back and forth, as I mentioned, asking it to interview us back to get the best prompt. So this will really be to start off a one-off chat. From here, we can switch to our models. I'm not going to speak on this too much. This just goes to strengths of the models and how many tokens it uses. At a high level, Fable 5 actually was just released for the next 6 days. This is going to be extremely expensive in the future, so we don't need to worry about this. For most tasks, this is like moving a paperclip with a bulldozer. It is not going to make sense for most tasks. Opus 4.8, this is for complex tasks, things like building spreadsheets, presentations, etc. Sonnet 5 is for just efficient everyday tasks, and Haiku is just going to be for quick responses. So tokens are going to be used accordingly. The Claude team plan is quite generous with the amount of tokens that we get. That is why we also encourage that plan versus something like Enterprise or Pro. We get quite a bit of token usage under the plan. From here, we also have the ability to dictate across apps. This is extremely valuable when we just don't have time to type. So we can simply turn on dictate and speak into the chat. And it'll give us exactly the verbiage that we speak into it. The other option here is to use voice mode. This is essentially like turning on a phone call with a friend who knows pretty much everything. So you go back and forth and it replies to you via audio rather than via text. I'm just going to speak to the interface a bit here. So we have chats where we can click on chats and it takes us to our recents. And from here, we can go to our one-off chats. But really the most valuable part of Claude and ChatGPT for that matter is going to be projects. This is where we can create a new project and store any relevant chats that relate to the one goal we are trying to accomplish. So from here, we'll go to create a project. We'll define what we're working on. So the name of the project, what we're trying to achieve at a high level. So project, goal, subject, etc. And then within the team plan, we have the option to make this visible. So if I'm working within the finance team, I can extend the visibility to Bridgewest Group and share within my team. Otherwise, I can make it private and only I will have access to the project itself. So from here, we'll go to create project. I have 2 mock projects here. I've archived the rest, but for here we have Toria Bioworks as a mock company. This is all just hypothetical information. But from here, we have a decision room, and I've defined it as a reusable workspace where we can pressure test things like plans, board materials, budgets, forecasts, etc. From here, it's really valuable to create a one-pager. And in the one-pager, we'll give a lay of the land in terms of who we are, our role within the company, where the company lands. So in this hypothetical company, we're saying we're in San Diego. This is our current stage, our cash position. This is a lot of information we're giving it, but we can really dumb it down depending on what we're trying to accomplish within the project. But for this hypothetical use case, I've just given what the company does, current business situation, leadership priorities, a lot of fine detail. And this was originally a Word doc. This is just what the format looks like once we jump into Claude. So from here, it always has the context as to what I'm trying to accomplish. Whereas if I go into chats, I'll have to constantly remind it as to what I'm trying to accomplish, and it's going to burn through more tokens and simply take more time. So that's the value of giving it files within your projects and also clear instructions as to what you're trying to accomplish. It just makes the AI so much smarter in terms of what it's going to accomplish. It also has memory. Memory is quite weak if we only use chats. So if we have 200 chats and we have one specific project mixed in between those 200 chats, Claude's really going to struggle with calling back on the memory. Whereas within defined projects, it does a fantastic job of stacking memory as you go through various different chats and projects. So I'm going to jump over to another hypothetical company, Harbor Point Services. And for this hypothetical company, I've given this mock document, which is essentially messy notes from a meeting. And this is going to be operating notes. So in these notes, I've given it about 3 pages where I give it details such as revenue changes, what I think about the changes, gross margin, cash at month end. I'll give it a hiring update. I'll give it an operations update. I will give it things that are going well from the meeting, concerns, possible priorities for the month of June, and any open questions. So from here, we can take this data a few ways. I'm going to show you 2 ways within Claude. One, we can create a dashboard using artifacts. Artifacts is going to be a location we can turn to where we can create things like apps and websites, documents and templates, games, productivity tools, etc. Or we can start from scratch. This is really where Claude shines in terms of its ability to build things like internal HTML dashboards and really design from there. So for this artifact, I've pre-designed it just because it takes a few minutes. I don't want to waste time on the call. So from here, I selected start from scratch. It comes back asking me for direction. So from here, I've come up with a prompt as well as the original document, which I went through. This prompt asks for a specific layout with KPI cards, a color coding format, specific sections. And from here, it goes to work. It walks through in real time exactly what it's doing. And it asks any follow-up questions. So in this case, it gave me a list of options and it asks if it wants me to adjust anything inside the dashboard. In this case, I answer back, it's good as is. And from here, we have, within the files, we have our original content and we have the output artifact. And from here, it turns those rough notes into a really clean and concise visual from this data. So from here, it gives us our key metrics we were focused on. We can focus on what we should act now on, what we should watch, what is on track. And this is all just within a few minutes, turning rough notes into this really clean HTML dashboard. This currently lives within Claude. And what I can do is I can either download it as an HTML or I can share it within the organization. So if I wanted to share this with a colleague of mine, I would simply go to share and copy. And within the team plan, we can go to the latest, we can go to copy the link and share it with a team member from there. One other area in which we can use this data is we can go to the projects, we can go to the Harbor Point, and this is another prompt that I gave it in advance just to save time on this call. I've simply just asked it to summarize this in a much more clean and concise manner in a Word document format. So from here, you can see we took give this a moment to load. We took the original rough notes into a much more clean and concise version. So if we need to share this via Word, we can easily do so, and it looks much more approachable and easy to digest. On one more front, we can also give it a much more simple prompt, such as just simply summarize this. If we're in a pinch, we just need the high-level summaries. Claude will come back to us from that prompt and give us exactly what we're looking for. One more note on the artifact. Since I created this under artifacts, if I want it to land within a project and live there, we can simply go to the 3 dots on the right, add to project, and we can add it to Harbor Point Services. And so from here, we can go to Projects, Harbor Point Services, and it lands here within all of our data and information. So as we work through this project, it'll have the memory and context as to what we were working on. I want to keep this really high level for this session, just a lay of the land of Claude to begin with. For the future, we're going to be jumping into Copilot as another tool that we're going to focus on and just some of the general use cases. From here, we'll also jump into Claude Skills, which will be under the Customize function here. And from here, we can create new skills or roles where we can use repeatable lenses within different projects. So for example, we can create a hypothetical CFO who pressure tests specific angles. And from there, we'll show you exactly how to set up an AI board of advisors who can pressure test your situations from different angles, just based on the context you give it. Claude Code, just at a high level, Claude Code is going to be reserved for things like building websites, building apps. That'll be reserved for a much later session. Connectors will be a topic. We'll want to keep security in mind. If we approach connectors, this would be connecting to things like, say, for example, NetSuite. If we want to pull financials out, we'll want to ensure that we keep a close eye on the permissions that we set so that it's set to a read-only. Claude Cowork at a high level, that's another term or feature that you'll hear across the board. We're going to reserve that for a much later session as well. That comes with potential significant risks because it involves essentially giving permissions from your desktop to Claude. And of course, we can sandbox this and only give certain permissions, and there are massive efficiency gains to be had, but that is going to be reserved for a later session. Just wanted to touch on that at a high level. So we will be, we'll have an itinerary for future sessions. We will share the topics in advance so that you can identify whether or not it's going to be useful for you. And from there, we're also open to feedback and suggestions. You know, if there's a specific topic you would love to have covered or a specific tool, we're all ears. We would love to adapt and really make these sessions a collaborative effort across the board. Because I think the most value is going to be driven from leveraging each other and leveraging how each of us are using these tools. And one more note, we are going to come up with an AI tool stack because there are specific tools such as Notion. I'm aware BVNZ uses Notion. I'm aware of how it works. I have not used it, but there may be specific niche tools that are relevant for specific industries, for example, or specific use cases. So if there's something you're using or a specific use case, again, we are all ears. We would love to discuss. And that will conclude today's session. Thank you all again for attending and for your attention. I look forward to growing these sessions in the future and expanding our overall usage of these tools. I will open it up for Q&A, any general feedback, any other topics you'd like to discuss.
Hi, Ryan. Maybe I'll start.
Hey, Richard. Sure.
Fantastic.
Please.
Thanks. That's really, really useful. And I thought that I was already pretty advanced with AI and some good tips. Thank you. I really want to try and use Claude. How do we get on the team membership for Claude? I don't know the process for that.
Great question. So you will have one admin within your organization. So it'll be set by your domain in your email. So for example, most of us within Bridgewest Capital Management, we have bridgewestgroup.com. So you will have to have one admin. For example, I'm the admin within our account. I essentially went in and set up the Claude account from the Claude website, identifying the team plan. Happy to drop a link in here. And it's as simple as just setting up the first initial payment. You have a minimum of 5 seats with a max of 150 seats. So you have to pay for the 5 seats in advance. The monthly rate is $25 per seat on a monthly basis, or $20 per seat if you pay annually. So it just takes one admin setting it up, and then from there you can start inviting members of your organization. The only caveat is it has to be members of your organization. For example, I could not invite you into the Bridgewest organization.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify. You know, each of these portfolio companies is likely going to have their own Claude client. And you'll probably need to make sure you have discussions. If you've got an IT org, or if maybe you don't have an IT org, if you want some advice from us, we're happy to give that. But you'll likely have to have your own Claude.org. We did some searching around to see if we could kind of have a broader group plan, but right now it doesn't appear that that's available to us.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Probably from a data security perspective also, and permissions is very important. We're going to make sure that each organization has the right setup.
Yep.
Hi, Ryan, Mark Crotty here. Just a quick one. Some members of our team weren't able to join today. No doubt this call was recorded. Is it a chance that we can, share that and the slide deck, please?
Absolutely. Yes, we will record
Okay.
all these sessions and distribute to the entire group. We will come up with some sort of platform to share these and really organize these sessions and use cases in the future. But for now, we'll distribute these via email after the session.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just a quick question,
Paul,
Ryan. Hey,
sure.
really enjoyed the talk. Thank you. Learned tons. Something you mentioned at the beginning was the privacy of the data. When you're using that Claude, the in-house Claude, is that retained within the Bridgewest? And that's so. For example, if I were to buy that and put my board papers in there and finance data and say update the board papers, please, is that retained only for me, or does that suddenly become public? Or
It is retained for you. The default for the team plan is Claude will not train on your company data. So you would have to specifically go and flick that on.
cool.
Other than that, the only risk would be if you, say, accidentally decide to share a project with the broader group, then that becomes a concern. So as long as you have your private data held privately, it is not a concern of data getting out.
Okay, thanks.
I think one other thing too, if there's a specific document that is highly sensitive, for example, and you can sanitize that document too. You can remove names, you can remove certain confidential information, then upload the document to Claude. But if you're in a paid Claude environment, your information generally should be safe, just as if you're in a paid Copilot environment. It's really, we don't want to use any personal accounts or unpaid accounts for anything that's company sensitive that you wouldn't feel comfortable sending out to somebody outside the organization in an email.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, no, cool.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions
Any
from the
other
group?
questions?
Yeah, so thanks everyone for attending. I used Claude today. I use it most every day. I use Copilot most every day. Today I had to create a new document from scratch that was referencing an employment agreement and an equity agreement. It was for kind of a one-off employee related matter, and I had to reference both those agreements and come up with a third agreement. And it was amazing. I just uploaded the two agreements, typed in, in 30 seconds, typed in what I wanted. It referenced the two documents. It pulled together a third document for me, had a couple things back and forth, and I was done in literally about 5 minutes. Something that if I had created that from scratch, I'd have to hire an attorney to do it. So just very, very powerful stuff. And you don't need to be a programmer to learn how to use this. These tools will be made available to you, but you're also, YouTube is just a wealth of information on Claude or ChatGPT or whatever else you want. You can learn anything on there, but we certainly encourage you to make sure you're operating within the bounds of the directions we've given. But it's very powerful, and you all should be using it. If you're not, you need to start. Hopefully, many of you are far advanced from what we saw today. All right, so Ryan, you'll send out the link for everybody. We'll, again, as Ryan said, we will find kind of a more formal repository that everybody will have access to. Please, folks, if your team members couldn't attend this session and they, you can forward the email link to them with the recording. We encourage any anybody, we encourage all of you to make sure you're including your entire team, your teams on these calls, so that as many people attend as possible. So thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to everybody getting better and better at using these tools.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thanks, Ryan.
you, Ryan.
Have a great day.